back to what I was reading in Isaiah, some of the prophetic passages I recognized that had to do with supposed messianic prophecies. They're just little passages tucked into the historical narrative that deal with the future restoration of Israel after they were conquered by the Babylonians and the Assyrians. And of course, they were attacked by the Egyptians and the Moabites and other insignificant countries. Insignificant meaning they weren't as powerful as the world powers. But they make little allusions to they'll be brought back after they've been in exile for 70 years, and then they'll be brought back to their homeland. They'll rebuild its infrastructure, and they'll plant crops again. They'll grow. Everything will be green and lush and prosperous. And they'll be able to build their own homes again and live in, have luxury. They live in luxury and have peace with the surrounding peoples and peace amongst themselves. And there won't be as many diseases because, of course, wars and famines, diseases, from decaying bodies and rotting corpses. Famine, that all creates disease. But a lot of that stuff will be made right or made new and clean and restoration. So those were considered prophetic passages because it was still yet future. But most of it was deemed immediate future. In other words, within Israel's early history, between those 100 to 200 years. That's mainly when the prophecies were fulfilled within those 200 or 300 years of their history. Well, all the way up until through the Roman Empire. The first, that's why during the Roman Empire, the church fathers, 80, 100, 200, 300, 400 AD, they kept actually alluding to Christ's return and the restoration of Israel and rebuilt temples, but not all of them. Some of these church fathers, these apostles of the apostles, or disciples of the apostles, from Polycarp on, Clement, and all these other ones, they had differences of opinions even on prophecy, and they even had differences of opinions on what Israel would look like in the future. And I don't know if all of them believed in the pre-tribulation rapture. I don't know if they all believed in the millennium, the Valkyrie, Christ. I think their opinions varied, even amongst the church fathers, Christian church fathers. Some of which were Jews, a lot of them were Gentiles who had converted to Christianity. Some of the passages I read where even Jesus himself alluded to some of the passages in Isaiah. He said that, behold, in the book it's written about him. He pointed out a few verses, a few little short passages that he was making applicable to himself. He'd get up and read it in their synagogues, and then he would close the book and sit back down. And if the Jewish leadership would challenge it and question it, be curious about it, and so they kept probing him with questions and asking him, does this, his views, his interpretation of their scripture. And Jesus was a Jew, but Jesus wasn't necessarily taught in their synagogues. He wasn't taught in universities. So the church, the Pharisees and Sadducees, which was their elite, they were educated too in the synagogues and in their religious schools, Judaism. And so they came up to him with some pretty relevant questions. Jesus seemed to answer their questions reasonably, but some of them were offended because the way in which they interpreted it or how he presented it, because he made them kind of feel guilty because he was basically saying that they weren't really listening to the true intentions of the prophets, the prophetic writings that they had learned so much about. So they got offended because they were, they thought themselves as elite, high learned people. They didn't want to be belittled or talked down to. So there was a lot of pride and arrogance there. So Jesus would challenge them and they would get all upset. They even tried to stone him because they thought he was blaspheming. Because he was making some of these prophetic passages about himself. And it was like, wait a minute. These scriptures aren't talking about you. These scriptures are talking about Isaiah himself or some other messianic figure. Jerubbaal or some of the other ones. And if you read it at face value, it does seem like that's who they are referring to. Isaiah himself and Israel as a nation or as a suffering servant. Like it was talking about Isaiah and Israel in the immediate context. So some people try to make the suffering servant as Jesus Christ, bearing our sins on the cross. There's some similarities in a couple, 2 or 3 verses, but you just try to stay with the passages right there around it and a little further out. The context is Israel, the nation of Israel. So that's what I'm coming up with when I read the holy books.